welcome back into another episode of the Sports Authority Gurus podcast. This is episode 2. If you joined us for episode 1, thank you. We're so excited to have you back for the second one. Again, I am your host, Keegan Russell, and Spencer Gray, my co-host, is with me again today. Please be sure to follow us on Twitter at The Sports A Gurus and on Facebook at The Sports Authority Gurus for more content and additional info. Today, Spencer and I are also joined by our guy, John Merker, a.k.a. JB, a.k.a. on Twitter at CallMeJohnBruno.
That's right.
Give him a follow. He tweets a lot of KU sports stuff, and that is what we're getting into today. JB, how you doing, my man?
Doing pretty good. It's a good Sunday.
It is. The weather is not terrible. It is maybe going to rain today, but we're inside talking sports, and that's all that matters. So today we are going to talk one of my favorite sports topics, and that is KU basketball. If you joined us in episode 1, you heard Spencer and I talk about our background with KU and how that's probably where most of our sports is centered around is KU basketball. JB is also one of the biggest KU sports fans I know, especially when it comes to KU basketball, which is why he's joining us today. So we're just excited to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the championship a while back, talk about how the roster looks now with all the draft decisions, returning guys, incoming freshmen, and kind of break down the lineup. Because that's the biggest question now is who is in the starting 5 lineup as of now, who's going to play, and what that looks like. So let's just dive right in. So I think I am excited about this episode because we get to talk about KU basketball as the defending national champions of the NCAA tournament. So back on April 4th, not that long ago, KU versus North Carolina. KU ended up winning its 6th title, or 4th according to the NCAA if you don't count the 2 Helms titles back in 1922 and 23. But KU won its 6th championship in a massive comeback. It was the biggest comeback in NCAA championship history. We were down 15 at halftime. All hope was lost. I was very pissed off. Didn't know how the second half was going to go, watching my team get wiped out. But they somehow managed to come back down 15 at halftime to win 72-69 in the final minutes. Let's just start there, guys. Spencer, let me start with you. How does it feel talking on a podcast as a KU fan knowing that your team is the current national champions?
Oh, man. It feels good because in 2008, I didn't have a podcast to talk on. I didn't know podcasts were invented yet. Yeah, I was also in 5th grade. But no, it felt so amazing. That game and the Chiefs game against Buffalo, I almost suffered 2 heart attacks this year.
Heart attack hawks.
Yeah,
coin.
That's a good phrase for it. But yeah, that's one of my all-time favorite games I've ever watched in any sport. It was fantastic.
JB, how about you? What was that experience like watching that game?
Man, it's funny you asked watching that game. There was half of it that I didn't watch. So I will say it was a very just incredible experience. Of course, from the start, I think we started really hot. And, I'm screaming. I'm watching in Allen Fieldhouse with some friends.
That's right. I did see you were. Guys, just a quick plug-in. If you ever get a chance to watch a postseason tournament game of KU at Allen Fieldhouse, highly recommend. I did that back in 2012 for the Final Four and National Championship. It was fantastic. So if you get that opportunity, please do so. JB can probably back me up on that.
Right. It's an environment that is pretty cool just because you want to scream loud, you want to rant and rave, and you want to be hyped up. And guess what? There's like hundreds of other people, if not a couple, maybe 1,000, I don't know, that might show up. And they're all cheering just as loud as you. So you're not alone, and it's a great environment. It's not exactly the same as watching a game, of course, live in Allen Fieldhouse, but it gets kind of close. But yeah, we started out hot. It was great, and then it just quickly came down to just the feeling of this is not going to be something we come back from. And I remember walking out of at least from my seat. I went down to the gift shop, and I was like pondering life. Like, this is 2 minutes before the first half was over. I'm like, man, I can't believe this is happening. And I remember going back up to find my friends and tell them I'm going home. And
wow, so you were ready to give up and go.
Well, and it's now everyone's gonna think this is a classic guy that's not a real fan. He gives up on his team. No, it's a strategic move. Okay, it's a strategic move because there have been other times when I have quote unquote given up on a team and there was success. Think about when we're down. What was it? 14 points to West Virginia with 2 minutes and 45 seconds left. I left that game, and I listened to it on the way home. But of course, that game turned out in our favor, and so did the national championship. Difference with the national championship was when I did go home, I drove back in complete silence, and I had my head in my knees, and it was complete silence. My fiance was driving us back, and she occasionally asked, "Do you want to know what the score is?" Because she could see that we were coming back from the Gamecast on her phone, and I was like, "No, don't tell me." And she's like, "Well, they're winning right now." I'm like, I don't believe you. Don't give me that. Oh, man. We got back with only 2 minutes left in the game, and I tuned in. I saw like the final 2 minutes of the game. I saw us win, and I turned to her and I'm like, we gotta go back. We had just driven 45 minutes home, and we ended up going straight back and wanted to party en masse. It was quite the experience, but in a lot of ways, it's almost not settled in for me. But man, it feels really good to talk about KU when we're on top.
I feel you there. It's been a couple months now, and I wouldn't say I'm in shock that we won, but it hasn't hit me in the same way like when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. I mean, it was cloud nine for months because that hasn't happened in so long. And yes, KU hasn't won a championship since 2008, but for some reason, watching that game, it just didn't feel real because we were getting the snot beat out of us early. And whatever Self said at halftime to them, they flipped the switch, they came out, let DeJuan do his thing and just shut down Caleb Love for a good while and got us grinding back in. And that second half, I was sitting on the edge of my seat at home the whole time, chewing all my nails off and just stressed out of my mind. My wife's yelling at me because I'm yelling at the TV, and the dog's getting mad because I'm yelling. And the comeback just kept up, and we saw some amazing plays. We're not going to break down the whole game because I'm sure a lot of you have already gone back and listened and watched and heard everyone's analysis on it. But what an amazing game. Definitely wouldn't have happened without a guy like Remy, who struggled all year but showed up when it counted. David McCormack, who probably has one of the biggest flip-flop careers in KU history as far as love-hate from the fans. Many times you want to write him off, and then he does something great, and then immediately does something bad. Huge game from him. Probably should have been the most outstanding player, but obviously it's understandable why Ochai got it. Let me ask you guys this. How does the comeback in this national championship compare to that 2-minute down 9 from 2008?
Oh, man. Well, I left the room before Mario hit the shot because I was so scared. I was like, oh, we're going to miss. We made a 3 we've made, 2 threes on the night or whatever. But this one, to me, was really surprising just because of the way we were getting beat. It reminded me of Villanova in 2018. It was just nonstop pound it all. We couldn't do anything right. We were turning the ball over, missing shots. They were hitting bad shots. And I think that's the reason why it feels like so hard to believe, just the manner in which we were getting beat down. Yeah. It felt like we were down 40. And so this one to me just feels a little bit more shocking. Because the one in 2008 obviously was very exciting, and then there was a shot at the buzzer. But I'm just looking forward to Dave's little turnaround hook shot being included in the hype video before games. It's going to be right before or right after Mario shot. So, that was fantastic.
JB, how about you? What do you think is more impressive?
You're tempted to say that this one being down by more points is probably more impressive. I might have to go with 2008 being more impressive. I'll say that for a couple reasons. Not to downplay our championship, but mainly Bill Self broke it down to the team, and I think we've all probably seen this, but broke it down to the team and told them, hey, would you rather be in that situation from 2008, being down 9 with 2 minutes left, or would you rather have the entire second half to come back And granted, we didn't even need the entire second half to really make it a game and get us back into it. But you know what I would say is there's still a lot of elements with this championship run that really resonates with me because it was high stakes and we've been waiting a long time for this title. So I'm pretty excited about it. It was very impressive. It is the largest comeback in championship history. So for the NCAA tournament. So that's something that we'll always have. It's one of those like bittersweet kind of, I guess, badges of honor, if you will, because no one wants to be in that position where, like, we were down.
We spotted them. Let's get the record straight. We spotted them 15 at halftime, right?
We did come back, and we did get it. We also, I could argue that Memphis team was much better than North Carolina.
I would agree.
Rose and man.
But you know what? At that point, the title's a title for one, and at that point, every team is good. North Carolina is a heck of a team.
You should never apologize for winning a championship, no matter.
Amen.
I mean, if Baycott went out and let's say Baycott got hurt in the first half and missed the entire second half, and that's why we won. You never apologize for a national championship. However you have to win is how you win. Which, for me, again, is why I think this year's was more impressive. When you think back to that 08 team, a lot of the stuff broke our way down the stretch. Memphis made a bunch of mistakes, turnovers, couldn't hit free throws. And a lot of that wasn't necessarily KU picking up the intensity. Yes, they were playing their hearts out to come back and win, but they had a lot of things fall their way. You know, Sharon getting that steal late, hitting the corner three to set up the final shot and all that. A lot of that stuff just broke their way, whereas this game, Oach had been struggling. He came out hot and then struggled, and we just kept pounding the paint with McCormick and Jalen Wilson getting big buckets, big rebounds. We just fought really hard. And even though, yes, Memphis is probably a more talented team than North Carolina, KU did everything in their power to win this game. Whereas I think, Memphis lost that game more so than KU won it. Yes, we had hit an amazing shot at the end. And that'll be forever. Every time I see that clip when I'm at a game, my three fingers go up and the tears come streaming down my face. But this win is more impressive, I think, just because Ochai was really struggling the second half. And we went back to David McCormick, who most fans are probably terrified to see him get the ball late in a game, especially going up against a team that's got some big guys. But I think that's why this one for me was more impressive as well. Just an all-around team effort. Remy Martin getting that huge block at the end, making some clutch threes that he's not really known for doing. And then just the way Juwan Harris can lock down somebody and just take him completely out of the game. That man exhausted himself in the second half for a 10, 12-minute stretch where he was just on the hip nonstop. And I was a little worried when he came out for a breather because Remy doesn't play the same defense. But Remy played quality defense, and they were able to pick it up. So that was exciting. You know, KU wins. Ochai gets the most outstanding player. We can argue back and forth on whether that should be him or McCormick. If you talk to the people that actually vote for it, they have to have their votes in before 2 minutes. And if you take the game outside of the last 2 minutes, Ochai was probably that guy. McCormick clearly won them the game in the last 2 minutes. So if you could go back, they'd probably give it to him. We've heard talk about, you know, if McCormick would have gotten most outstanding player, would that cement his status in KU as far as as far as getting his jersey retired? We'll debate that another day too, because he did have a back and forth career. But KU wins the national championship. That's fantastic. But what happens next? Roster turnover. They lose a lot of guys. So KU is losing 7 guys by my count, 6 guys. All graduating or going to the draft, and they could have lost a couple more. Surprisingly, no one transferred out of KU this year, which is the first.
That was a big shock.
That's the first time in the last I haven't looked this stat up, but I think it's probably been 10 or 12 years we haven't had a transfer. Bill Self always gets a bunch of guys in, and there's that one guy that's not happy. And there were candidates for that. I think Kyle Cuff, who we probably won't know a whole lot about for a while, he could have left. KJ could have left, could have gone somewhere bigger. Couple guys like that. So let's just kind of dive in. Let's talk about who's leaving first. So obviously Oach, first team All-American, National Player of the Year candidate. Should have won, in my opinion. I think the Big Ten was highly overrated, and none of their guys should have been winning that award. But he was the most outstanding player in the Final Four. Is going to be a lottery pick. I've seen him as high as 7-8, as low as 18-19. He's obviously going to get drafted. I think he's going to have a quality pro career. 3-and-D prospect is where he fits the best right now, but is a good scoring threat, can do a lot there. So you lose him, you lose your leading scorer, you lose a guy who probably had the best single season at Kansas since Danny Manning, which has been a long time now. So that in itself is impressive. You lose him. You lose Christian Brown, the Kansas kid. He had a somewhat up and down couple of years. Junior year, I think he really showed up. His shot wasn't super consistent, but we know he's more than capable of that. And he hit some major threes this year. National championship game, Final Four, all sorts of games there. He's known for some other things which we won't talk about on air, but I'm sure you know what those are. He has a certain phrase he likes to share with the opposing team when he drains a three in their face. And I think we're going to be seeing him do a lot of that in the league too. He's a projected mid to late round pick right now, which is probably good for him, which means he'll end up in a good team. They can just plug him in as a good shooter off the bench and develop. You lose David McCormick, so you lose your big man in the middle. Probably not going to get drafted right now. He's not in the top 100 in most people's boards, so he's going to go into the G League or go overseas. Mitch Lightfoot, we did hear on another podcast recently that he plans on getting into the G League, and if not, going overseas to play a pro career, so he's going to continue on in basketball. There's a Jayhawk legend right there. All-time winningest player at KU. Yes, he got the benefit of that extra COVID year for that. That's another big piece we lost. He was very clutch down the stretch. And of course, his running mate, the red-headed mullet, Chris Tehan. KU's never won a national championship without a Tehan since those two have been in school. Or I guess the last two they've won, they've had a Tehan on the team. Not probably going to have a pro career in basketball anywhere. That's okay. That's not really what he's known for. Jalen Coleman-Lands also graduating and moving on. Haven't heard a lot of buzz on him as far as pro talk. He probably has a chance at making a G League roster invite. Probably not going to get up to the NBA level. He's a little older for what they like, but he could have a solid G League career or play overseas. And then Remy Martin, that's a big question mark. Coming into the draft process last year, I thought he was going to be a top 45 pick just based on how well he played at Arizona State. But he is very undersized, and I think that scared a lot of teams. So he came back, had a terrible senior year, lost a lot of time due to injury, but finished out pretty well. Probably not going to get drafted either, but he's more than likely going to be playing overseas or in the G League. So that's who you lose. A lot of offense right there that you're going to have to reload on, which we'll get into. But then we also have the two guys that entered in the draft process and then decided to come back. Jalen Wilson tested the draft waters last year, came back, tested him again this year. Honestly, I was shocked that he came back. I thought his combine went very well and he was going to end up staying in. But he decided to come back. So let's start with him first. Were either of you surprised with his decision to come back, or did you feel like that was the move all along?
Man, I thought he was going to leave because number one, he had a good combine, but number two, he left on a championship note, which because I think a lot of times the biggest motivation for players coming back is like, okay, well, we lost in the Elite Eight, lost in the Final Four, might as well come back. Or I think what ended up happening is I think he saw areas in his game that he wanted to keep developing. It was at one point in the year he was shooting, I think, 40% from the free throw line, which I was just so surprised at. But he really picked it up, but I think his shot's still a little inconsistent, so maybe he wants to get better at that. I think I've claimed that since he's been a big part of our offense, he was by far, to me, the best at getting to the rim in finishing. He's a great rebounder, great defender.
Offensive rebounder.
He's a stud, but there might be just some areas that he thinks that maybe his pro game isn't going to translate quite as well, so he wants to come back. And, I mean, you get him a Big 12 Player of the Year candidate, probably going to be, wouldn't watch most of the year. So that's probably, I was surprised, but I'm really glad that he did.
Yeah, I was surprised, I would say. There's so much that goes into a college season, and the school's on top of this. Like, sometimes these young guys, they just want to be done with school, and they just want to make their money in the NBA. Of course, now we have the NIL deals that can allow our athletes to make money while they're still in college. So maybe that played a factor in this. With Jalen, I just had this vibe. I could totally see this guy as someone who just wanted to go out while on top. And there's no guarantee that KU
kind of like Mario in 08 could have come back for a senior year, been a first round pick, but you go out a winner.
Yeah, and he had an upward trajectory.
Yeah.
Okay, he was finishing the year so strong. He had really cleaned up his free throws. He had really cleaned up his finishing. His 3-point shot was coming back, and then not to mention he gets he does some G League stuff. He gets the invite to the combine. He earned it. So the NBA was seeing his progress, and that alone I thought might be enough to put him into the draft. But then again, if you're not guaranteed to get drafted, it's always smarter to come back and improve your stock. So I guess that's good. But him coming back really excited our fan base, because if you think about it, if he's gone, I mean, it's like, who do you have? And we'll get into that, I'm sure.
It'd be 4 of your 5 starters gone.
Yeah. It's like, who's the guy? Who's the guy if he doesn't come back? We don't know. So it was really good for him to come back. I think he wanted to be that guy, and he certainly can be.
Yeah, Jalen coming back, again, I was surprised. I thought he'd done enough to show he was worthy. To me, that probably says some teams that either didn't get him the guarantees he wanted. Now that it's been a couple of days to reflect, coming back is probably good. He's got to show he can shoot the outside jumper consistently if he's going to make it in the NBA. Just because he is undersized, I mean, he's listed at Kansas at 6'8". I don't know if you guys saw his combine numbers, but he was, with shoes on, he was 6'7.25", and without shoes, he was like barely over 6'5". So he's not as tall as we thought. When he had his thicker hair, that kind of helped give him some height. So he is undersized to play the 4 in the NBA. Now, he can do that very well in college, but I think he's got to show enough of that outside game development, being able to switch consistently on defense to cover multiple positions and kind of show more of that process. So he comes back, he gets that opportunity. I think, as we'll get into here in a minute, we'll see how he changes this offense. Maybe he becomes the focal point. But that was big. The second guy who transferred into Kansas but stayed in the draft process until the end, that was Kevin McCullough out of Texas Tech. Another guy who, upperclassman, has been at Tech for several years. He's known to be a very versatile defender. He's about 6'5", 220. Not a very big guy, but strong, athletic, versatile defender who can guard the 1 through 5. I think that's another big addition. It was obvious to me he was going to leave the draft process and come to KU. He's not much of an NBA talent right now. He's kind of a Matisse Thybulle similar guy, just not as consistent shooting. He only shoots about 32 to 35% from the 3. So he comes in. So now you go from a roster that would have been mostly underclassmen and DeJuan Harris to having 2 upperclassmen who, yes, for all intents and purposes, are seniors that have been there, done it, and step right into the lineup. So getting Kevin McCullough was huge. I think he's going to bring a different style. He's definitely a Bill Self player, gritty defender, plays hard. Hoping that we see a little bit of his offensive game transition. When you leave Tech this last year did not have a very explosive offense. It was very slow pace, grinded out, take the shots when they're there. So being in a different style offense under Bill Self might change his game a little bit. What are you guys' thoughts on McCullough and how smooth of a transition he'll have stepping into this roster?
Yeah, I think it adds to our depth in wings, which I really like the lineup we have in terms of kind of the 2s and 3s on the team. Because I was worried, we were losing Brown, we were losing Ochai, but now we got a lot of guys that my only concern right now is a little bit outside shooting. Spacing might be a little bit difficult, but we don't have to play like we have Devontae and Svi on the team every year. So, we can, even if spacing is going to be hurting, if we have versatility on defense, and I'm sure Self's gonna play through Ernest down low, and that's as he always does. I could be the center, and Bill will play through me. So as long as Bill, he's gonna keep the same playing style, and so dump it to the big and just allow the offense to run through him. But I'm excited because we have a lot of depth in wing when I didn't think we were gonna have any this year.
Yeah, I would agree. It's one of those deals where it makes you excited. You see that we still have DeJuan. Kevin's a very, very skilled defender, and it's one of those years that I think is going to be, sure, it's probably going to be less on scoring, but our defense is really going to take a step up if you can believe it. We had a really good defensive team this year for the title, but I think there's an argument there for this to be a step up. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's, and we can talk another day on if we would have preferred to get Tyrese Hunter, if we would have preferred somebody else.
Isaiah Mosley.
Yeah. But, Kevin he's a consistent scorer. He knows his role. Great defender, of course, and Bill will certainly know how to unlock even more potential out of him. So it gets me excited at the end of the day.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a better defensive team. I think you've got, and again, we'll get to this in a second once we start looking at lineups, but theoretically, KU can throw out a lineup 1 through 5 that could switch on almost any guy other than DeJuan getting on their big guy. But yeah, the addition of McCullough gives them a nice wing defender who is instantly going to match up with their best scoring threat, unless it's their point guard and throw DeJuan on them. That is, Spencer, you brought up a good point. Offense and shooting might be an issue with spacing. We'll get into that here in a few minutes too. I think they will struggle early in the year to find an offensive identity, but I wouldn't be shocked if there's a lot of games early where it's a 58, 54, 65, 61 type game where it's lower scoring, grinded out, because our defense will be there. So let's look at who's coming back. So outside of Jalen Wilson and Kevin McCullough, here's the other remaining scholarship players from last season. And again, none of these guys transferred out. So you've got DeJuan Harris, of course, coming back, and he's instantly slotted in as your starting point guard. There's no question about that. We're not even going to debate that. He is Bill Self's guy. No matter what hype you've heard about Bobby Pettiford being the next great guard at Kansas, DeJuan's play in the tournament solidified himself as the guy until he leaves. So he's back. You got Zach Clements, who we didn't get to see a whole lot of, unfortunately. 6'11", center who can step out and shoot the three. Working on building some size this year to be a threat. He comes back. Still have an unknown with Joe Yesufu. He's going to still be here. He was one I thought might transfer again, just because he didn't really have a chance to do anything this year, and he had a very short leash with Self. But he's obviously going to compete for minutes. He could compete for the starting 2 spot, and we'll get into that too. He's back, and of course Bobby Pettiford's back. Another one who potentially could have transferred if he wanted to find a better role somewhere else, because he's not guaranteed a starting spot. Finished the year on a downhill just because of the stomach and abdomen injury, so we don't know what we're getting there yet. Didn't really get to see a lot of him. KJ Adams, I think that's a big bright spot. Him coming back, super athletic. He is an athletic freak. That guy's thighs are bigger than most people's butts and head. Like, that dude, he's so thick and can jump out of the gym. Versatile defender. Doesn't have much of an offensive game, but that's a big guy coming back. That's huge for what KU's going to do. Cam Martin, who a year ago talks were he was going to possibly take over the starting spot or play alongside McCormick and be a big threat. Came from a small school, but was known as a scorer. He was averaging north of 20. Didn't get to see anything from him because he ended up redshirting, so we'll see how he plays in the fold. And, of course, Kyle Cuff, another athletic wing combo guard that came in last year and was a redshirt candidate. He was another one I thought might transfer because I don't see him playing this year. We'll talk about that. So that's kind of the guys coming back. Before we talk about the incoming freshmen, any of those guys returning that you think are going to have the biggest impact on this season? Or do you think any of them outside of DeJuan have a huge impact?
Well, I think KJ Adams could definitely have, because I was so impressed with him and his versatility on defense, and he's going to aid to that identity we're going to have. I could see us having like a Virginia type of season. So, we don't score over 60, but our opponents don't score for 50. So he could contribute to that identity very well. And then I'm interested to just see how Pettiford and Yusefu play. I don't know how they can coexist. Yusefu's kind of a smaller guy, so I don't know if you want him in the two-guard spot, but I know he definitely can score it. And then I think there's going to be there's a lot of guys that can play in between positions. And so it's going to be up to Bill and his staff to kind of put people where they're going to be the most effective. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing. But KJ is the guy I think I'm most excited about.
Yeah, we're in a tough spot where we have to fill a lot of assignments that are leaving. I would bet KJ definitely steps up. You can already tell Bill fully trusts the kid. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't give him a whole lot of minutes. Sure, he was a freshman, but he is ready to step up for sure. I'm glad he didn't decide to transfer away. I'm glad he embraced that potential role that he could have in this year's team. My guy, I'm going to vouch for him till the day I die. Cam Martin is my guy. I think he knows that. I tweet about him sometimes. He likes it, and I'm like, I'm going to screenshot this and send it to all my friends. But it's like he probably does that for everybody. Cam Martin is my guy. I've been high on him ever since I heard about the buzz of him coming into KU. I thought he was going to play last year. He decided to redshirt. Broke my heart. But it makes me really happy to see what he could do this year. I know that what he did and what he's built his college career on was at the D2 level. That's not a concern to me. I don't care what your competition is. If you're shooting 44% from three, you can shoot.
Yeah,
and
as a center.
This guy, we touched on how we have to somewhat come up with a 3-point shooting comeback, I guess. That we were losing a lot of shooters. This is how we do it. We stretch the floor with him. And, Cam, he doesn't have to be our number one option at all, but he will always be there to get us a bucket. He is going to be, in my eyes, the David McCormick replacement. At least that's what I hope for. He's also wearing number 31, and my favorite all-time player of all time for KU was Jamari Traylor. And Jamari knows this. I tweet about it all the time. He's my guy. Cam Martin, he might be my number 2 if all goes well with this season. Who knows? But I'm really, really excited for Cam. I'm loving his game, and I'm just rooting for him.
Yeah, I'm a big Cam supporter too. I think he's getting overlooked mostly because KU fans don't know anything about him because we didn't see him play. And we'll get into this in the lineups, but I think that he has a very good chance of sneaking into the starting lineup to start the season. So let's look at the incoming guys because this is a pretty stacked incoming freshman class. One of Bill Self's best recruiting classes he's had in years. Recruiting's kind of been an issue for the last couple of years. We can talk about that on another day too. But this is a very talented group, and it starts off with Grady Dick, the Gatorade National Player of the Year out of the Wichita area, 6'7", 200-pound wing. He's very athletic, can jump, can shoot. Really, really good shooter. That's kind of his biggest attribute is his shooting and scoring ability. Not quite sure how the defense will translate because honestly in high school, the guys that are the superstars that score all the time don't have to play defense, if we're being honest.
Do they even play defense in the AAU anymore?
I don't think they do. They just let you run up and down the court and dunk it. But I think he's going to be fantastic. He's very long and athletic. I was trying to come up with a good comparison. And honestly, I think he is very similar in ways to Christian Brown. I think he can almost step in and just replace him. I think he's a more consistent shooter than Brown. I'd say Brown's a little bit more athletic and stronger, powerful, because he could jump out of the gym. But I think there are a lot of similarities there with Grady Dick, and he has potential to kind of step into that role. Could be one of KU's leading scorers. Could could not be. He might not even play a whole lot. We're not really sure. I'd be shocked though if he's not a starter just because he's a high quality talent. Then next, let's look at MJ Rice. Another freak athlete. He's 6'5", 225, plays the 2, 3, 4 spot. He's considered a 3-level scoring threat, so he has the potential. I think with the way KU plays, I think it'll be a little bit of a time before he gets going. I kind of been comparing him to a little bit more dynamic Wayne Selden.
That's good.
A little bit better shooter than Selden at this stage. Also pretty similar play style to Mark Vidal that played at Baylor a couple years ago. Vidal's a little bit thicker and stronger, not as good of a shooter. But MJ kind of plays that where he's aggressive, he's very physical. He has no problem getting down in the paint, backing you down, bodying you up on defense. Very, very powerful. I think he's going to be a guy you're going to see running up and down the court, slamming it on guys a lot this year and over the next 2 years. So super excited about him. Then that brings us into Ernest Uday, the 6'10", 230 center, another highly talented recruit. Kind of has a lot of room to grow on the offensive side. He's very raw with that ability, but he's another one of those, think similar to when Joel came in. Not gifted offensively, but was tall, athletic, and could move. And, of course, Joel went on to develop a lot of moves throughout the year. But Ernest is pretty similar. He's going to be kind of your rim-running, athletic defender. Might not be a huge scoring threat this first year, but could develop into that. He's been drawing a lot of comparisons to Thomas Bryant. That used to play for Indiana and now plays for the Wizards, I believe, still.
I think so.
He's kind of that rim runner. And Thomas Bryant has developed a jumper over the years. So if Uday can do that, fantastic. Probably is going to put on a little bit more size once he gets here. If he's going to play the 5 spot. And then you got Zuby Ejiofor, a 6'8", 215 forward. Again, this is another super athletic, strong kid. A little bit undersized for the 5, but in the way the game's changing, you are getting a lot of undersized guys who are athletes that can defend, switch positions, run. Not quite sure what his offensive game is going to look like either. He's a pretty good post guy, backs you down, loves to play in the paint. So he has a lot of potential. There's a lot of options there. Out of that group, who are you guys most excited to watch this year?
Oh, man. Well, probably, most excited. Obviously, Grady Dick's got a lot of hype around him.
Yeah, I can already hear all of the camping names being shouted out with him included.
he gave us, that's a gold mine. But I love 3-level scorers. I think they are so crucial. You have a guy that can stretch the floor and get to the rim and play in the in-between game. I think that's something like even, some of our more talented guys like, Abaji and even Ben McLemore, I wouldn't really classify them as 3-level scorers. I classify them as great shooters that have good first steps because they're pump fakes and all that can get defenders up. So I'm really excited for him. I'm excited for Ernest because I'd love to see another 4-year big guy get developed because I think that's so specialty. And he definitely has the body and the potential to do that. So I'm excited to see him. And the MJ Rice thing, knowing what I now know about him, he's a little undersized for a 3. I think it was 6'5".
Yeah, about 6'5".
So that's a little undersized, but if he makes up for it in just strength and he's a strong-bodied guy, I would love to see another Wayne Selden guy. I broke my heart when he left, and so I'd love to see another guy that can catch bodies and run to the rim. Because Abaji, I always self-style play. We don't get a lot of posters. We don't get a lot of, outside of Abaji's alley-oop one that he had this year. So I'm excited to see really good athletes on the team, and hopefully we can be a really fun team to watch, even if we are only putting up 60 points a game. Right. So, but that's really what I'm excited about. I think we had a really, really good class. So I'm excited for all of them.
Yeah, if MJ is anything like Wayne, I feel like I have a lot of guys. Wayne Selden was like my guy, just at the same time Jamari was. When I was a student, I came in the first year that Jamari was there, and gosh, Wayne was right there behind him in terms of my favorite players. My heart was broken when Wayne left. MJ, I could see him staying 3 years. I could absolutely see that. I could see him being a huge, huge offensive threat for us. Ernest is probably the guy outside. I'm grazing over Grady Dick because I just feel like he's going to be so good for us.
It's kind of obvious.
It's kind of like
he's
obvious.
Probably that guy. Yeah.
I really am though excited for Ernest as well, and I get major David McCormick vibes, and I shudder to say that because it's like we know David McCormick's polarizing to say the least in terms of our fan base and how he's gone up and down. He has games where he gets 3 rebounds or 12 rebounds. You just never know. But man, Ernest, he's built just like Dave, and he could be a powerhouse, and he could either explode and stay here for 1-2 years, or he could stay all 4 like David did. I'm really excited for that, and I'm sure he could be a part of that discussion in how we replace David's production from this championship.
Yeah, it's a really good class. There's a lot of potential across those 4 there. I think, again, I'm most excited to see the development of Uday. I think MJ is going to be so much fun to watch. Kind of that combo between athleticism of a Ben McLemore, capable scorer, and then the power of a Wayne Selden coming in and driving his knee to your chest against Baylor and dunking on you. So I think there's going to be a lot of posters we'll see of him this year. But Ernest, for me, is one that I'm just intrigued on how he could develop. Like you said, he could be a standout or he could be a dud. I think he's somewhere between that Check Diallo, Joel Embiid first-year kind of guy as far as where he is currently. So I hope to see him develop. I think Zuby is an interesting one too. If I had to pick of the 4 a potential likely redshirt candidate, I would maybe say Zuby, but I could also be talked into him being your starting 5. He kind of, to me, has a similar body to Silvio De Sosa, which didn't get to quite see the full opportunity of what he could have been in our team. But I think Zuby has that potential. He's a little bit more developed offensively. I'm kind of an old school basketball guy. I like seeing the paint pounded and guys attack the rim and dump it in. So I think there's a lot of great opportunity to see those guys step in. So with that being said, let's jump into lineups and rotations. So we're going to start with projecting out the starting 5. And then we'll get into how the rest of the rotation is going to shake up. So there's 200 minutes in a game to be given out. And if we know anything about Bill Self over his last 18 years here, he does not play everybody. So there are going to be guys, no matter how talented we think they are, that just aren't going to get minutes. And more than likely, one of these 13 scholarship players is going to take a redshirt this year. So let's kind of dive into that. Like we said earlier, you can slot DeJuan Harris and Jalen Wilson and probably Kevin McCullough as your guaranteed 3 of the 5 spots. Harris is clearly going to be your point guard. Jalen's definitely going to be your 3 or 4 man. I don't think there's a scenario where he's your starting 5, but Jalen's probably going to be your 4 man. And then McCullough a 2 or 3. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think McCullough comes off the bench? Is there any scenario where those 3 are not guaranteed starters?
If they don't play defense during training camp, I think they don't play the rest of the year.
Self has done some crazy first game lineups just to make a point.
That's true. No, I think those 3 are locks. I think McCullough, Bill, in addition to defense, he also likes experience, which I thought that until the whole thing with Remy happened. But traditionally, for the most part, he likes to go with experience. I think those 3 are locked. And then it really just depends with the size he wants in the lineup. He could play Jalen at the 3 and then play, Clements at the 4 and then Cam at the 5. Then you get shooting a little bit back. You have your front court that can both drain threes. So, but those 3 are definitely locks. I'd be really surprised if Grady Dick doesn't start. Like you said, I think just because of how talented he is, we need a shot creator on there. Jalen can be that guy, but I like
he's not that knockdown shooter.
And not only along that, I mean, we need guys that can maybe triple threat into the mid post and get some mid range. Need guys you can plug in the middle of a zone and just have him go get a bucket, because that's my main fear with the rosters. If he or the lineups, if he goes too much on defense and we have no spacing, well, great, somebody can just play a basic 2-3 zone and we're done, because the only shots we're going to have are threes. And I don't know how good the center's going to be, or if Jalen can just plug into the middle of that. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be the hardest thing as rotations and lineups for Bill this year, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We just have a lot of options, but if you play them wrong, then I don't know. It could lead to probably maybe a little bit of a rough start, like 3-2 start or something like that.
Yeah, we could see another year where we play with 8 different starting lineups. I mean, it's definitely, there's open doors for sure. Out of those 3 names we mentioned that we could essentially write in as locks, Harris is a lock, Jalen is a lock, whether he's starting at the 4 or 5. McCullough, I would say, is the only one that has a hot seat with me, and that is the main reason is really just because he doesn't know our system yet.
Sure.
True. He needs, whereas someone that I'm going to say is likely to start at the 5 is Cam Martin, because now he's had a year to learn the system. Grady, I do agree. He has all the talent, and he's a tremendous athlete. So let's slide him in. But McCullough, I can see him fighting with some of the other guards to be in that starting spot, just in case things weren't really going well over the summer or to start the year in practice. But that's not to say that he's not fully capable of starting. I would give him a high probability of starting. So that's where I'm at.
So when I look at lineups and projections, right now the most common starting 5 we're seeing, if you listen to other podcasts and anybody that follows KU, the most common one you're seeing right now is Harris at the 1, Grady Dick at the 2, McCullough at the 3, Wilson at the 4, and Zach Clements at the 5. I would venture to guess over the course of the season, that's probably going to be your most likely starting 5. However, if you've paid attention to any Bill Self team in the last 18 years, Bill Self does not always put out the lineup that you, the listeners, or us, the KU fans, think is the best lineup based on talent. He doesn't care how talented you are. If you can't do the things he needs you to do, you're not getting playing time. We saw several times last year where McCormick, who was definitely more talented than Lightfoot, came off the bench because Lightfoot was actually producing and adding value where McCormick wasn't. And we've seen in years past too, where even when Self has had a talented team, really outside of the Wiggins, Embiid, and Selden, Self doesn't always start the talented freshman just because he's there. When Kelly Oubre was here, it went almost 2 weeks before he cracked the starting lineup. And even then, he struggled to keep that spot. Ben McLemore's probably the exception to that rule because he had a year in the system like you were talking about with a guy like Cam Martin. So when we're talking about these lineups, keep in mind, this is going to be a fluid rotation. There is no right and there's no wrong answer to this. I wouldn't be surprised if the starting lineup we see for the first game is a lineup we never see the rest of the season. Self loves his 2-guard combo and he loves his big man. So there is a strong likelihood that Bobby Pettiford starts the season at the 2 and he runs the 2 guards out there. I'm not going to say that's probably the lineup all year because you don't have a lot of shooting capabilities there and it's undersized. So just kind of take that in mind when we're thinking of these roster constructions. So my starting 5 is pretty similar to yours. I do obviously put Harris at the 1. I've got Grady Dick slotted at the 2 because you got to have a scoring shooting threat, and I don't think McCullough is quite that guy, and I don't want to rely on Wilson being that guy. So I got Kevin McCullough at the 3, Jalen Wilson at the 4, and like JB said, I think Cam Martin starts at 5. I don't know if he ends up keeping that spot all season, but you could easily flip-flop him and Clements. I think both of them have the edge over Uday and Zuby just because they've been here. Maybe you could say Clements has the edge because he played last year and he's a little bit taller, bigger. But Cam has a scoring threat that Clements just hasn't been able to show yet. So I think Self's going to go with the seniority approach and start Cam at the 5. And then over the course of the season, we might see that spot move up. Cam is one that he can see 10 minutes a game. He can see 25 minutes a game. But I think he's the one that starts with that spot. But other options, I mean, it's possible that Yesufu gets the starting 2 spot. Pettiford gets the 2 spot. Maybe they bring Grady Dick off the bench and they start MJ Rice because he's more athletic. There's a lot of scenarios we could see here. I think the one that I don't think is going to happen is KJ in the starting 5 as the 5 man. I could see him starting at the 4 if Jalen's the 3, but I don't see KJ being your starting 5. He's just undersized. And poses virtually no offensive threat right now, and that's just not a traditional Bill Self starting lineup. Whoever his 5-man is a scoring threat for the most part. There have been seasons where that's not been the case. Tarek Black starting at 5, but that's because you had Joel Embiid coming off the bench. So I don't see a scenario where that's the case. I just have a hard time seeing him throwing out a roster where the 1 through 4 are your defensive powerhouse of DeJuan Harris at the 1, McCullough at the 2, Jalen at the 3, and KJ at the 4, and then a scoring threat. I just don't think positionally that makes a lot of sense. With this roster construction, Jalen is your 4, and he's going to be that guy. So I don't think KJ gets in that lineup. Kyle Cuff is one I'm interested in. Again, he's one who'll have a year under his system, and he's slightly undersized. I think he's listed about 6'3", 210 combo guard. Has potential. I've seen some of his highlights. He can jump. I just don't know what to make of it, so I don't know what kind of playing time he gets. So
he's kind of a mystery.
Yeah, he's a big mystery, which, again, I'm surprised he didn't transfer. He was the one I was anticipating that would transfer out, but maybe he's thinking, hey, I had that redshirt year under my belt. I don't want to waste another, I've already sat out one whole year. I don't want to just go to a whole new system and try and learn right away when I've got this one down.
Yeah.
So for the sake of this scenario, let's say Cam gets the starting 5 spot and Grady Dick's the 2. As we look at how the minutes are going to shake up, traditionally, early in the season, Self plays 8 to 10 guys. We've got 13, so clearly they're not all going to play. And that's not even talking about walk-on guys that are on the roster, too, for games that were up a lot. So that rotation is going to start out 8 to 10. Of course, as we get into bigger games and conference play, that's going to slip into 7 to 8. So you're going to see a few more of these super talented guys not getting playing time. If you guys had to pick right now your 1 through 8, and it doesn't have to be specific lineup of starting 5, but who do you think is going to be that 1 through 8 getting the most minutes, and who are the guys that are potentially going to be left out?
Oh, man. Well, I think the key is to just make sure you have good enough spacing at all times. So you need 2 or 3 guys that are competent shooters. They don't have to be elite, but otherwise you're just going to have a really loaded paint, and Jalen's not going to be able to drive, and we're not going to be able to dish it down to the block without, a horde of players surrounding it. But for me, for the 1 through 8, obviously DeJuan's locked. I like Grady Dick at the 2 a lot. He's 6'7", so he has a 3 body, but playing him at a shooting guard because of his shot, I think will work out
again.
Well.
It gives you that kind of Christian Brown Ochai approach.
Exactly, and then McCullough, I think playing him at the 3 you can get away with, even though he's a little shorter because he's a bigger body, good defensive guy. Can shoot 32 or 35 is not bad. It's like the NBA equivalent of like lower 30s. So having those 3 out there. And then obviously Jalen's going to be at the 4. And then I think definitely Cam will probably start at the 5. And you can get away. He is a little undersized, but I think you can get away with that because Wilson's such a good rebounder.
Yeah.
And then you had another spacing guy that, number one, takes their center out of the paint on offense too, which I really like. And then the 3 that I think will probably get the most minutes off the bench, I think it's either going to be Pettiford or Yusefu. I don't think it's both. I think they're 2 similar players. And for right now, from what I've seen, I think I'll give it to Yusefu right now. I think he can be a really good energy guy off the bench, good scorer, give us some buckets, and he's a quick guy. Whether or not he's an elite defender, he at the very least can keep up.
And we've at least seen him shoot a little bit. We have no idea what Pettiford can do.
Absolutely. And then I think MJ Rice is going to provide the major scoring off the bench. And then I think he flip-flops between Clements and Adams based off what he wants. If he wants more spacing, then I think he'll use Clements. But if he wants more defense, which I think that's where he's going to lean, I think KJ will probably get that. So honestly, if Clements doesn't start at the center, I don't know how much playing time he's going to get because I'm sure Ernest will get some. But he might be one of those guys that is the super talented guy that may not get a lot. Because I think just comparing him and KJ, unless KJ's so raw offensively, then it's like playing him 4 and 5.
Yeah.
I think he'll start to get more of the time. So I think it's roughly going to be 8-9 just because you kind of have that backlog in front court guys. But that's what I would like to see personally.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. My 1 through 5 is DeJuan and Grady and Kevin and Jalen and Cam. I think there's no other name than KJ that I can put as my sixth man. Just from the promise that we've seen this past year. But looking at the other names, it's tough. You want to put your money on these freshmen coming in. MJ and Ernest look really good. I don't know if both of them fill out that 6 through 8 spot. I would put KJ and then Zach. And man, I'm not as high on Joe anymore. Only because I feel like there's a reason that he was benched for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
What bothers me about that though is when he was playing, I was seeing huge production. He was getting steals. He was running so fast. He was replacing that speed that we were missing with Remy. And he certainly has that capability. Now he's going to be a year older. He knows the system now, and so I'm really tempted to put him there. I saw bright spots from Bobby Pettiford, but I also saw him turn the ball over too. So it's really tough. I'd probably just say MJ just to round out that last spot.
Yeah, I love talking about potential lineups because every year I look at the roster and I see depth. Even when the depth doesn't actually work out and we go to a 7-man rotation, I see depth. And this is one where, based on potential production, I think Self's got one of his deepest teams of options, but we know he's not going to play everybody. So it's so tough to do that 6 through 8 because I think from a fan perspective, a lot of the lineups I see, they've got KJ listed as 9th, 10th, 11th. And guys, that's just not how it's going to be. KJ was one of the few guys that did come off the bench, and he got almost more playing time than Jalen Coleman-Lands down the stretch. And Coleman-Lands can shoot, and KJ can't. So KJ's going to play. I think he's your 6th man. The tough thing with this lineup is the 5 spot. Like Spencer said, what type of production do you want to see out of the 5? Do you want that defensive-minded approach? Okay, then you're probably going to see more KJ and Uday at the 5. If you want more floor spacing, a little bit more offensive production, then yeah, it's going to be Clements and Martin. So it's tough to figure out how are those minutes going to shape up. What I hope for is early on we see 10 guys play. And I think one thing that we can take away from this last season is we had such a tight rotation and Bill Self had such a tight leash on guys that a guy like Ochai struggled down the stretch because he was overused, tired, there were several Big 12 games where he had to come up with the last second shot and force it to win the game. And I think if we manage that rotation early on and give guys the playing time they need, who knows what having a Zach Clements in the rotation last year would have done if he actually got the chance. So I'm hoping when I look at the roster and I'm looking at how to divide up minutes, obviously by the end of the year, Harris, McCullough, and Wilson are all going to be averaging around 33 to 35 minutes a night, if not more, in big games. I'm hoping to start out, he cuts it back a little bit closer to that 30 range. Grady Dick's the kind of big kicker for me. Does he play 30 minutes? Does he play 20 minutes? Is he 25? So I think a lot of it depends on how you want to use Grady Dick. So my first guy off the bench is still KJ, and then I think it's Pettiford or Clements. I give Pettiford the edge over Yesufu just based off potential. But I could see Yesufu being that guy just because that's why he was brought here. But it's really that 4 and 5 spot that I don't know how you play, because how are you going to sit here and say you have a guy like MJ Rice not getting minutes or only getting 5 to 8 minutes a night? Like, he's so talented and such a great athlete that you got to find time for him. But we know Self's not going to play everybody down the stretch. So I'm just hoping early on we see a lot of minutes out of everybody. I think, unfortunately, the 2 guys that are going to be affected the most are going to be Ernest Uday. I think he's going to get the least amount of playing time in that 8 to 10-man rotation. And then either, like you said, Yesufu or Pettiford. Self traditionally does not play a lot of minutes to 3 primary ball handlers. So one of those 2 is going to lose minutes. And then I think Kyle Cuff and Zuby are the 2 that don't see any playing time, in my opinion, right now. But I've listened to a lot of podcasts on this lately. There's an argument that any of Clements, Martin, KJ, Uday, or Zuby could all start at the 5, depending on how the summer goes. I could see any of them winning that battle. But I think ultimately as we go throughout the year, to me right now, Zuby is probably the one that is left out in the paint and may be a redshirt candidate. So if you look at that end of the bench rotation, do you guys think there is someone who is almost foregone conclusion redshirts, or is this a year where we have all 13 scholarship players active?
Yeah, well, Zuby probably does redshirt. That's really the only one I can think of, which is crazy. I mean, no one's going to have a 12-man rotation in college.
Even when Calipari did it with his platoon swap, he still only played 10. And they divide their minutes almost equally. And that's just not very characteristic of a Bill Self-led team. Yeah,
I will say I do agree with the point that if we stick to that tight rotation of 8, it's going to lead to some, especially guys that are doing heavy lifting on offense, it's going to lead to some really tired folks, especially during certain stretches of conference play. But the only one I can really see redshirting is Zuby, and then other than that, that's why I was surprised that there wasn't any transfers.
Yeah.
We were such a stacked team, and we were backlogged on all the positions, backlogged on ball handlers, backlogged on centers, and usually when that happens, they go somewhere else because they're like, I'm not going to get playing time here, so I'll go to Chattanooga or freaking James Madison or whatever.
Yeah.
So. That's really only one I can think of.
I 100% thought Kyle Cuff or Joe Yesufu were going to transfer. One of the two. My really good friend, Mitch Montgomery, and he's going to be my groomsman next month when I get married. I guess he's got a buddy that sat next to Kyle Cuff's parents or something in the airport, like after the title run. I forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, Mitch, but they struck up a conversation about Kyle, and I think this guy Mitch's friend straight up asked the guy, Kyle's dad, is he going to transfer? And they were like, no, he's all gung-ho for KU, and he's got a great spirit. I want the most out of Kyle Cuff. I wish him the best. I would love to see him play. I kind of hope he transfers though. And maybe if he doesn't get any minutes this upcoming season, he might end up transferring. And
unless he's willing to hold out to be, that third year as playing time opens, that development stage. Maybe for him, he's like, hey, this is the best place for me to develop. And while I could go play right away somewhere else, maybe I am in a position to improve my game better here in the long run. Because he's not one of your one and done guys. He's not a 2 and done guy. So he could be that guy that develops. And so by his senior year, he is that guy.
Yeah. Well, he could also play better during training camp and beat out Yesufu and Pettiford. And then all of a sudden he's a backup 1 or 2.
If Mitch Lightfoot was around here, he would tell you how incredibly difficult boot camp is every year. He did it for 6 years, and it got harder every year. At the time of this, we're still a ways off from Bill Self boot camp. So there's a lot of stuff that could change over the summer. Right now, only a couple of the freshmen are on campus. They still have Zuby and MJ to come in next week. So we just haven't seen anything. There's just so many different options. Obviously, someone's going to have to sit. But I think we have a luxury this year as far as we have options. So even when guys are sitting, it's because there's also someone good in the lineup. The one issue I have with this roster is I am worried about three-point shooting.
Yeah.
There's not really anybody on the team currently outside of maybe Grady Dick. And again, he hasn't played a college game yet that you could say is a consistent threat. McCullough could be that guy, maybe in a different system. He shoots. He didn't really get that much opportunity to shoot at Texas Tech, so we didn't really get to see a great area of his game that could be improved. So maybe he becomes that guy. Of course, we said it earlier, this is the opportunity for Jalen to step up and show he can score from outside. And I think that's something he has to do because he took a lot of threes this year that were open, and they just clanked off, and that was a bummer. So
DeJuan too, because DeJuan, you could tell, especially come tournament time, he was working on his 3-point shot. He hit so many threes throughout the tournament that surprised me.
Yeah,
So
he's very selective.
Yeah, very selective. Kind of like Christian, he kind of took the 3-point shot for Christian took a backseat almost in this year. It was kind of weird. He became very selective, but his percentage did go way up. So maybe if DeJuan does that, a missed shot is essentially a turnover a lot of the times. Yeah. As long as it leads to a rebound for the other team, right? It's almost like a turnover. So if you can be selective and get a good shot, it can be pretty valuable. I see DeJuan working on that in this offseason, and if he can step up in that way, like he hasn't so far, but if he can step up in that way, other teams, they don't see him as a threat yet, so he can really surprise people and probably win us some games that way.
So, again, a lot of this is very prediction stuff. We have no idea what's going to happen. That's what's the fun part of talking about this, is these are just ideas. Self ultimately is going to put together the best roster, the best lineup that he needs to, and I'm excited to kind of see how that shapes out. So let's kind of, as we finish up here, I'm going to throw you guys a couple scenarios. I'm going to give you guys each, a lineup to give me based on a certain play style. So Spencer, I'm going to start with you. Give me your 1 through 5 when you need a outside scoring threat. Who are your 5 guys you're putting out there when you need to start hitting threes? Okay. What's that lineup look like?
So I love DeJuan, but he's not in there. He's not at this point not a great 3-point shooter. So out of the guards, I'd probably put Yusefu at the 1. I do Grady at the 2. And then I'm trying to think here. Cam's obviously going to be at the 5, so I can stretch it. I'll play him and Zach in my front court, and I'll just have them and just put Jalen at the 3. So you have guys that are 1 through 5. All of them can confidently shoot at least 35%. And I'm sure I'm leaving Scott. MJ Rice has a good jumper as well. So at that point, I'm almost tempted to replace Jalen with them. But then I don't know where rebounding is going to come from. Sure. Zach's a skinnier guy, Cam's a undersized guy, and Jalen gets more boards than anyone on the team for some reason. But yeah, so I'll keep it for that 5 for right now.
JB, any different approach to that for you?
No, I love it.
All right, easy enough.
Perfect.
All right, let's go to the next one. We need 1 defensive stop at the end of the game. Who's your 1 through 5 best defensive lineup you can put out there?
And JB, you take
with what we know right now.
In case you take what I'm going to say.
Well, you got to run with Harris and McCullough. Defensively, it's tough to put Grady in there because we just don't know quite yet. So I might leave him out. I'm definitely having Jalen in the mix somewhere. But defensively, man, this might come as a weird. I definitely want KJ and Jalen. I think you could even go small and get away with it as my 4 and 5. But one weird thing I might say is Bobby Pettiford. I just remember watching him early on last season, and I was like, he looks just like Frank Mason. Not just because he's wearing number 0. But he looks
and he's
like
been predicted to be the next Frank Mason.
He just looked like a bulldog. Like, he just looked so active. So I really liked him. That would be my sleeper.
Yeah, I think the defensive lineup could be very interesting. He's got a lot of options. I'm not that high on Jalen Wilson as a defender, and I think some of that was just based on who he was guarding. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's got the quickest feet. So matching up with an athletic 3 might be somewhat difficult, which is probably a reason why he came back. So if I had to go 1 through 5 for 1 stop, as much as I don't want to take Jalen out just because of his rebounding, maybe you keep him in there, but definitely got to have KJ in there, Kevin McCullough, DeJuan Harris. I think MJ Rice could be that guy just because he's so physical. And so if you take a guy like Jalen out, but MJ's in there, can he use his physicality to get rebounds and then rely on Harris to get that stop? So I think there's a lot of options there. Okay, let's do one more. Actually, let's do 2 more. First one, your quickest lineup. That we're just going straight speed up and down the court to make this a run and gun game.
Oh shoot! I like people. I don't know. A lot of people bag on Harris's athleticism. I think he controls tempo really, really well, and I think 100%. He's also very quick. I'm not saying like court end to the court and end of court speed, but he's very quick. So I'm keeping them in there because I think he controls the tempo really well. I'm adding Yusefi. Yusefi was like a little lightning bolt when I watch him out there. I think Grady Dick, I mean, he's a very slim guy, 6'7", so I'd probably keep him up there, and he's an athlete, so that'll help with run and gun, and if we were trying to do 7 seconds or less, definitely KJ. I'd probably honestly finish it out. I go small, because I don't know if any of the bigs can contribute to that, so I'll do, Jalen at the 4, KJ at the 5, and they can just switch. Defensively, but a small, quick lineup. The only thing is shooting isn't great in that lineup. And I think the whole thing with defense is that if we play, even if they're talented defenders, if they're all undersized, then we get a team that has a 7-footer in the middle, and it's done. So, but in terms of just quickness, I think that'd be a pretty fun team to watch.
Yeah, I agree. There's really not much you can do. Our bigs are going to be a little slow. I love you, Cam, but I'm not putting you on the speed list. But yeah, I wouldn't really make any changes there either.
Yeah, I could see a scenario where Jalen's your 5 and you don't have KJ out there, and you go, MJ and Grady and Pettiford or Yesufu and Dewan. I don't see a scenario where Pettiford, Yesufu, and Dewan are all out there.
We're not getting a single rebound.
Let's do it.
But that could be an interesting lineup to see. Well, let's end up with a couple predictions. Give me your guy who you think are going to be the top 3 leading scorers.
Oh man, well, I think this team, the leading scorer is going to be a very slim margin. Like I think it'll be like a 14 points per game can get you top. So I think Grady's number 1, and then I actually have to really take a look at this. I think whoever, here, I'll do Grady at 1. I'll say that Cam does start at center, and I think he is second. I think he's a talented scorer, and Bill runs his offense through the center. And then I think Jalen will round out the top 3. And the only reason I don't have him higher is that I saw how Selk used him, and I don't see it being a lot of offense. I think it'll literally be like Jalen at 11, Cam at like 13, and then Dick at like 14, 15. It's going to be super narrow.
Yeah, I can definitely see it being narrow. I gotta put Jalen at the top. I think a lot of us naturally would gravitate to that. This is his team now. Yeah, in a lot of ways, this is his team now, and he's got to be the guy. He's got to be that guy for who do you go to when you need a bucket. He's got to step up, and that could either be a 3-point shot or it could be him driving and finishing. He's good at both, so. I got to put him at the top. I can see him easily going for 15 to 16. It could be in the 14.5 range for sure, but I think he's our number 1, and it's a tight race. Sure, I would put Grady at number 2, and I think maybe McCullough at number 3. I think he can step up. He's going to have a role that he's probably not used to at Kansas, and I'm going to bet that it benefits him more than it would hurt him.
Yeah, I think this is definitely, like both you said, a year where your leading score is probably not pushing 14. That's going to be tough. Unless Jalen has like a Dedrick Lawson year. They're somewhat similar. Dedrick's a little bit bigger, more fundamentally sound in the paint, but they could have a similar year like that. But if I had to go just right off the bat, I'd say Jalen 1. I do think Kevin McCullough is your second leading scorer just because of seniority, and he's going to get a lot of minutes, so he has the most opportunity. And then it's really a toss-up between Grady and Zach or Cam. And again, I'll give Cam the edge for now because I think he'll get the most playing time early. But yeah, this could be a year where you either have a lot of guys scoring a decent amount, and that's great, and it's well balanced. Or this is a year where, like we said, it's tough to be pushing. This is not a year where KU is, I think, top 2, maybe even top 3 in Big 12 scoring offensively. They might be the best defensive scoring team in the league, but this is not a year where we're going to see a lot of 80-point plus games, in my opinion. Any other final thoughts from you guys as far as predictions? Any surprise? Give me a surprise player that's going to have a breakout year, and a guy that you think is going to have a dud.
Oh man, I don't know if I want to say a dud because I don't.
Or a disappointing season.
Disappointing season. I think it would boil down to some of the freshman guys might have disappointing seasons just because of playing time, not because they're playing poorly. But I think the surprise guy will probably be. It'll either be whoever wins the guard battle between Yusefu and Pettiford and Kyle. Whoever comes out of that will probably have a really good year. And then I would venture to say. I'd say Jalen has the potential, like you said, to have a DJ Lawson year and like have 18, 19 points per game and lead the Big 12 in scoring, be that Big 12 Player of the Year. I think he has potential to do that.
What I would really love to see as a surprise would be Harris stepping up.
Oh yeah,
I would love to see that, and I think he's got the potential. He knows that it's his ship to steer. So, he's not going to be fighting for point guard minutes and ball handling minutes with Remy anymore, that's for sure. Now, of course, Bobby's there, and the point guard and the two guard race is there, but I really would love to see Harris, and I could definitely see him surprising us with improvements to his game. As far as a dud, it's hard to see a lot of these guys having a kind of an off year or just maybe a disappointing year, but I don't know if this is bad to say. I might get some hate for this, but KJ might be my pick for anyone that might not produce what we think he's going to be producing in this upcoming year. And I don't mean that to put hate on KJ. I think he's going to be great. But is he going to make a huge jump in his second year? Maybe not. And I don't want people to get too excited too quickly. Sure. I could see him being like a Thomas Robinson for us, where he really makes that big jump into his junior year.
Third year. That's funny because for me, KJ is my surprise guy. I think I don't know what he's going to do offensively, but because of his defensive presence and being in the system another year, if he gets more minutes, I think he's got the best opportunity to showcase his skill set. And I'd also throw Zach Clements in there too, just because there's so many minutes to give at the 5 spot, and someone's got to come out with that. And so I think he's got a great opportunity. As far as a disappointing season, I have a feeling this could be a year where a guy like MJ Rice, as talented as he is, struggles.
Yeah.
I think back to Kelly Oubre when he was here. His first couple weeks of the season, he really struggled to find his groove. And then throughout the year, he kind of got back into it, but was never really turned out to be the scoring threat we anticipated. And I think a guy like MJ could be similar to where his type of play style may not fit the type of game Self wants to run every day. So he could be one who loses out on some minutes to be productive. Now, he could be one, though, that takes the minutes he gets and is super productive in those short spurts, but I just don't know how much he fits the Bill Self style, because I think, again, at the end of the year, Kevin, McCullough, Jalen, and DeJuan are going to be playing so many minutes that there's not that much opportunity for that 2 and 5 spot to really be divided up. Someone's going to win those. But that's the exciting part about making predictions. We could all be wrong, we could all be right. And the best part is to sit back and watch throughout the summer, see how training camp goes for him in the fall. As we get closer and closer, we're still quite a ways off. There's still possibility that different moves change over the summer. Just because a guy says he's not transferring doesn't mean he leaves the program later. So there's still things that could change. Guys could develop and improve. But I think that's a great place to end this discussion now. This was a lot of fun. We'll definitely be doing more KU basketball stuff coming down the road. I want to thank our guy JB for being on today. JB,
thanks for having me.
What's your Twitter handle again?
Call me John Bruno.
Give him a shout out on Twitter. Give him a follow and a like. You can find us on Twitter at The Sports A Gurus and on Facebook at The Sports Authority Gurus. We'll be posting content here throughout the next couple weeks as we start building up this podcast and recording a lot more. So stay tuned for some of that stuff coming down the pipeline. Hoping to get you a Chiefs episode soon, a Royals episode, definitely some NBA Finals talk, NBA draft projections.
Good luck to our guys in the draft.
Yep. Shout out Och and CB. Hopefully David can get a spot somewhere, and Remy. JB, congratulations on being engaged. It's exciting. Maybe the next time we're on this podcast together, you are a married man. And
Probably will be.
You have
1 month to go.
You got a month out. How are your nerves right now?
Through the roof.
Through the roof. Well, I think you can handle. You got a month to prepare. You know, if KU basketball players have all semester to prepare for the next season, I think a month is just fine for you.
Yeah.
So wish you the best of luck there. As far as the listeners, thanks guys for listening to us today. We appreciate it.